Hello and welcome to Education Scotland's The Pedagogy podcast. I'm your host, Bex Ewart, and I will be leading us through some really interesting conversations around about pedagogy with a really wide and broad spectrum of educational professionals, children and young people. This podcast came about as a response to the OECD report, which found that in order to improve the quality of outcomes for our children, practitioners and teachers need to be supported to explore their own pedagogy and their practice through a pedagogical lens. Unsurprisingly, in the early years, it's been a focus, and so there's a lot of research and policy documents and research papers around about the subject of pedagogy. But as we move through the school stages and into secondary school and further education, that reference to pedagogy drops off. We'll be talking to a whole host of educational professionals from the early years through primary, young children and people from various different stages in their education, and then right into further education, exploring pedagogy, what it means to different people, and what we might change and what we might challenge ourselves around to ensure that our education meets the needs of our children and young people as we move into an exciting but unknown future. Welcome everyone to this episode of Education Scotland's The Pedagogy podcast, and I'm delighted to have Blair Minchin with us today to talk through his experiences and his pedagogy. So Blair, could you introduce yourself please?
Hi Bex, lovely to chat with you tonight. My name's Blair Minchin. I'm a primary school teacher based in Edinburgh. I currently teach primary 7. I'm an avid supporter of pupil voice. I love coaching football too, and currently I'm really pushing, learning about and discovering and exploring play in upper primary school. And I guess I'm pushing it upon my pupils, but very much because they want it to, and it's kind of in conjunction and in tandem with them.
Super. So play in upper primary is not that common. So could you give us a wee kind of potted history about how you got to where you are now, from maybe what you were doing before teacher training and then what led you to this part?
Yeah, definitely. I think my journey's done a complete 180. I came into teaching from a background working in commercial litigation. I studied law and got my master's and all that in law before. And so when I was coming into teaching, I genuinely actually thought that we needed to be really rigorous on the academic front. I was going to be more of a disciplinarian, all this sort of stuff. And within 2 weeks of my PGDE studies, when I went into a nursery in Edinburgh, I realised that I had to abandon all of these beliefs because they were flawed. And kind of from there on out, I realised, I think I was really lucky on my PGDE that they put us in the nursery for 2 weeks right at the start. I think it was a genius move on their front, because I saw the power of play there. And then I went into primary 2, and again, continuous provision was definitely a thing then, but realising the ambition hadn't been published, maybe wasn't as ingrained as we now see it in the early years. But I realised the power of play, and I've just kind of taken that into my practice, and year on year I've just kind of gone deeper down the play hole. But for the better now. So where I'm at the stage where I think I kind of meander and journey between playful lessons where they're very hands-on, very active, or total kind of child-led free play where I'm observing and kind of just maybe now and again steering in the direction and letting the pupils really lead their learning and shape the journey we take across the curriculum.
That's quite the kind of the journey, so to speak, to use the X Factor talk. But just to come from, and particularly the way you were talking about your, I guess, law is very straightforward, and there are, things to follow, and I guess the disciplinarian thing makes sense there. But to see how your shift has changed into how you see the pupils as part of that relationship. So I guess, does that inform what pedagogy means to you? So what does pedagogy mean to you?
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I've still got friends who work in law. I'm not throwing lawyers and paralegals and all the rest of it under the bus by any means. However, there was a kind of culture of, at least in the field I was in, of kind of stepping on people's toes and kind of being out for each other in that. And, sometimes the more ruthless you were, the better the results you really got. I find that to be completely the opposite in schools. You rely on colleagues, you rely on pupils. It's about building relationships with parents, the wider school community, and that's what strengthens you. And I think acknowledging that we're all fallible as well also helps in that too. And I think that really does underpin my belief of what pedagogy should be. This pedagogy style, I guess, that we should be following in Scotland is all about relationships. And I know it's such a cliched phrase these days, and some people feel it just gets trotted out all the time, but they really are so valuable. Learning can't happen. I don't believe, at least, proper and true learning can't happen unless kids feel safe. They've got that sense of belonging. And they're allowed to follow their curiosities. But yeah, I feel that's exactly what we should be doing, and you don't always get it right as well. Yeah, and there's a lot of I think as well, we kind of live in the grey a little bit as teachers. Law felt a bit, like you say, at times very black and white. I think teaching, you need to be comfortable living in the grey, not just because every day's different, but because you're dealing with humans, you're dealing with people, and nothing's very simple. There's always a story behind every action. So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think when I trained kind of over, 14, 15 years ago now, it was that understanding of the relational aspect of teaching wasn't really put forward in the PGDE that I did. And I did the same thing as you. I had 2 weeks in nursery and I loved it. And that was where my spark for early years came from. But it was almost like there were just these mechanisms that you could apply to create a good lesson. And as long as you went through the stages of creating a good lesson, then if it didn't work, it wasn't your fault, because you'd done you'd done your waggles, you'd done your learning outcomes, there you go. Yeah. And I think there's a bit of a shift in terms of how we think about ourselves as teachers needed to go into thinking about the kinds of pedagogy that you're exploring, because I don't know, well, certainly for me, my natural state as a teacher was control freak. I needed to know where everything was. My room had to be a certain way, it was mine. And that
I can relate a little bit to
that. But then when you come through that thinking about how the best learning takes place and how actually forming really meaningful relationships with your pupils is not about behavior management, it's about good humaning.
Yep.
And then like that. So did you have to kind of come through that thinking yourself in terms of accepting the pedagogy or embracing your pedagogy now?
Yeah, I think so. I got onto Twitter quite early into my career, maybe just into my second year. And when I first arrived on that space, and I've done so much of my thinking, my discussion, my connections have came from there. I've branched out now into other things, but yeah, at the time when you first went on, it was quite a traditionalist platform, and I often felt that the values and the principles that I was, feeling were the best way to go in my classroom, of pupil voice, of kind of autonomy, that sort of stuff, that was often sidelined, or I got lots of articles and research chucked my way. Oh, that's not the way to do it. So yeah, it's been, yeah, I think I've grown a thick skin. But yeah, I do think it's right. I think it's the way to go. Just to kind of build on what you were saying about relationships and all that. Yeah, did you know I had a student last term, and they were in their final placement, so they were taking the class 4 days a week. which meant that we had a lot of illness as well, like COVID kind of came back just before that winter. So I was covering lots of classes, and I covered the primary 6 class a lot. I've got a primary 7. So I rolled out a lot of the same lessons I had with my P7s into P6. And like you say, Waggle, success criteria, the structure of the lesson, it's all the same. But there wasn't the spark, and there wasn't the fluidity as well within those lessons, because whilst I know those people, it's a fairly small school I'm in, I don't have the relationships built up with them, to have that to and fro, to know where they want to take the lesson, their mannerisms, are we pulling my leg here or whatever. So I truly believe that's where the magic comes, and that's where transformational teaching comes from, is knowing your pupils. And in order to do that, you need to give them the space to show you who they truly are.
Yeah, that's a big thing, isn't it? And you referenced realizing the ambition earlier, and obviously the strapline for that is being me. So that's it is. It's about that recognizing people on a human level, and there's an element of trust that comes into that I think again is something, certainly from my own professional development, I had to come to. It wasn't something that I was supported to think my way towards. Kind of having that trust in children being able to lead their own learning, and actually that children will want to, and young people will want to kind of stretch themselves and go where their interests take them.
We are the facilitators. We are the guides at the back of the boat, steering things where they go. But to anybody maybe listening who is a little reticent or worried, about giving their pupils a bit more autonomy, a bit more choice in the direction that the learning takes, I can only speak from my experience down the school and up the school, that pupils really do rise to the occasion. I found when you give them those opportunities, they will outstrip your expectations. And frankly, I think they will flourish.
Lovely. So you mentioned that the Twitter sphere has been part of your kind of development throughout there. What other thinking about pedagogy has inspired you the most in terms of your practice?
I think I'm very much a globalist, and learning for sustainability was huge for me. I think that's something I've always been interested in since high school anyway. And then getting into education, realizing that learning for sustainability had, such a push and was a real center point in so many, schools, from the green flag, scheme to the global goals that my school embrace. So that's been wonderful. And I think that really underpins a lot of what I do, is, trying to open kids' horizons, trying to think about bigger issues, worldwide issues. And I think it makes learning relevant to them as well, and gives a real immersive and exciting context for learning too. For example, all my maths lessons last term and mostly this term all linked to the global goals. So we did fractions looking at clean water and access to sanitation. We did time looking at sustainable communities and looking at bikes, electric buses, e-scooters, all those sorts of things. We did money through a lens of no poverty, which was all, I mean, a bit of a minefield, but really, really rich conversations, deep thinking, and the kids were so invested in it that we invested, talking about money, sorry. It wasn't an intentional pun. But that ended up stretching on another 2 weeks. And for all that's being said about changing Scottish education at the moment and curriculum for excellence and all the rest of it, I love that curriculum for excellence is so open, flexible, and you can just park things and let the kids really just lead the way at points. I think that's a wonderful thing that, frankly, we should try and hold on to.
I'm interested in how you're managing to use things like the Sustainable Development Goals as an authentic context for learning. And so I think I saw on one of your tweets that you'd started the year off with, or started a term off with, right, these are the kind of overarching things we need to hit. How do you want to do it? Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Could you talk us through that and how that works for you?
Yeah. Right. So I've had a primary 3 and a primary 7 and a P6 actually that I've done this with. So between the P3 and the P6-7, it's been slightly different. the P3, I think, is the best example. So I took the benchmarks in maths and I put them into like child-friendly language. And then we stuck them all up on the board and said, this is what we need to cover this year. What ideas do you have for it? So, and how do you want to learn? And so they all went off into wee groups. One group was looking at money, one group was looking at fractions. And they came up with lots of ideas. Some, the usual things, can we make pizzas for fractions? We did do that, love it. But also as well, some like data handling, bar graphs and things in P3. Some of the kids, I had pictures and everything for them as well. But, they were like, we've never done this. I don't know what I could do with this and things. So then I would be like, right, well, we've got some holes here. What about these global goals that, our school focus on? I was like, could we like link any of these to what we're doing? And then they're like, oh, maybe we can make a graph about like plastic in the ocean. I was like, okay, right, okay, great. What else could we do with graphs? And thinking about under the sea. And they're like, oh, how many fish are in our river? And all the but you know what, the ideas flew from there. And before you know it, we've kind of mapped out what we want to do in maths and what global goals we can link it to. And then I feel it's my job as the teacher to actually turn those ideas into, lessons that have progression, differentiation, accessibility, choice, all the, principles of the curriculum that we want in there. And I always kind of leave these as well with like, so I'll maybe plan 2 weeks worth of learning. And then at that point as well, I'll have a check-in bit with the kids and say, right, this is what we've done so far. Where do you want to go with it? What else do we want to do? Has anything else piqued your interest as we've been learning? Which in P3 was quite time consuming planning that, I will be honest, but I feel I've got better at it. And having done a whole term of it, a whole year of it, I kind of had lots of ideas anyway for when I went into P6 and P7. Obviously, the challenge was going to have increased, but the actual contexts, again, are similar. And yeah, now I've managed not to do any work at weekends since the summer, so that's really, really good. I mean, I take the football team on Saturdays, but other than that, no, I haven't taken any work home. So
that was going to be one of my questions, because part of the kind of thinking around this is actually, well, gosh, is it going to be, because the teaching profession, educators work above and beyond
too long
completely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so whenever we're talking about another change, something that involves a shift in practice, something that involves learning things that are new and experimenting, it's always that kind of time pressures. It's, well, of course Blair can do it because he works from 7 till 10 every day and then all weekends.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because I kind of feel that where I am now, I think if I hadn't done, I was going to say the legwork, but that sounds a bit pompous, I feel. But no, if I hadn't, if I hadn't put the hours in, would I be able to plan as quickly as I can do this year?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not, actually. Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know if that comes with experience as well. It depends on the class too. Primary 3 class is very different to a primary 7 class, especially the independence and autonomy side of things. So, I don't know. There's no easy answers in education, is there, sadly?
No, not at all. And I was just thinking back to sort of my probation year and the year after my probation year, where I felt like, I did work all the hours and then some. Yeah. And it does get easier. But yeah, I think you just learn which bits you can park for a bit.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
The other thing that I wanted to touch on is I'm guessing, but I'm not sure that it's not a whole school approach that you're part of in terms of your pedagogy and your approach right now, or have I got that wrong?
In my setting, there is quite a value on teacher judgment, teacher autonomy, and also the personalization of learning for the kids as well. So, and I think that's exactly how things should be. So no, not every single classroom you walk into has the exact same thing going on. We have the same progressions. Our global goals are in our whole school focus. We have the same health and well-being curriculum that we all feed into. So we are 100% connected. We do so much, working as well, collegiate working and working with classes. But no, we very much value the individuality of the pupils, and that each each individual class is its own wee ecosystem, isn't it?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
things will, one class is a bit more, they do a lot of songs, a lot of dance, a lot of kind of wee games and
Yeah.
things like that. Other classes might be a bit more, I don't know, that traditionalist
Yeah,
kind of
but if you're
feel to
talking
it. But
about what we're talked about in terms of relationships, that makes absolute sense.
100%. And I feel I'm so lucky to work in a setting where that is valued so highly.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, definitely gets to know their kids. And we've got a wonderful, wonderful rapport and a lot of empathy going on. So, yeah.
And in your professional judgment, and obviously you'll do the kind of typical things with your SLT, like attainment meetings and like tracking children's progress over time, has there been an impact, either positive or negative or not, in terms of the attainment of your children and their ability to engage with the curriculum?
Yeah, actually, my classes have all made progress every year, I guess. I always feel awkward, I'll be honest, talking about this because I, I don't know. I don't really like to use kids' attainment figures as a metric, if you like,
No,
for
for
how
sure.
successful a classroom is. But no, they're my P3, my P6, my P7, my P7 before that have all attained, exactly kind of where we would have hoped them to attain.
I think that, yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't,
if that explains it. I know, don't
it
worry.
does. No, I guess my question is that a lot of the time in education, and this is a kind of a global issue, is that what is easily measurable becomes valued.
Yes.
And the other things that are harder to pin down, that we would perhaps wish were more high stakes in terms of the measure of success and the measure of a good education, because they're hard to grasp,
Mm-hmm.
aren't used. But what I'm hearing from you is that your kind of qualitative data, your engagement with your children, their experience of being in your class, you're checking in with them, you're using, you're really valuing them as partners in their education. That experience is positive,
Yep.
and you haven't lost some of the other
Yeah.
aspects that are more traditionally easily measurable and kind of used as a metric of successful education.
No, I've made that awkward. That you haven't. I apologize. I saw that Jacinda Ardern went and said she was stepping down, and I saw that
Mm-hmm.
horrible headline in an article saying, "Can women still have it all? It's Jacinda Ardern proof." And I was like,
Unreal.
oh, but I tell you what, I feel, when we talk about education, play pedagogy, pupil voice, and attainment, I believe kids can have it all.
Yes,
There we go.
that
You were
is a
probably
good
like,
strapline.
where's he going with that? But no,
Not gonna
I think
lie.
I think they can, and I think we as
Okay.
teachers can as well. But then again, every class is unique, every child is unique. Sometimes needs must. So,
But it's a space that you negotiate and you create with the individuals in front of you, right? And I think that's
definitely,
what that negotiation doesn't always come comfortably,
yeah,
for
yeah.
teachers
I
of my
think
generation.
no, definitely, and I think when we talk about play, especially play in upper primary,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned as well. Like I haven't got it right every time. If you try to foist something on pupils and it's not challenging enough, or it's not, well, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not going to work. It has to, I feel, to be successful and to be impactful, it does need to be organic. And the pupils need to be partners in us, with us, and collaborating with us, and how we design the learning. Yeah.
Alison Clark is an early years specialist, and she talks about a culture of listening in terms of education. She's kind of highlighted that particularly is successful in kind of Norway and Denmark and some of the Scandic traditions.
Yeah.
But she was saying that involves teachers being comfortable with discomfort and uncertainty. And I think that's that thing, that negotiated space. You don't go into it with your own agenda going, yeah, we're going to do this thing.
Yeah.
It is that, like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I feel I put pressure on myself sometimes when you stand up in front of the class and you are saying, right, how are we going to do this? Or, sometimes I give them very, very vague lessons as well. And I'm kind of like, I'm banking on them to give me the ideas or to come up with the way we're going. Like I've always got an idea, but I'm like, don't really want that idea. And that, yeah, sometimes that there is a pressure that comes with that. But listen, I have many failings, but I know that one thing I've got is that I'm an ideas person. So yeah, I guess I'm lucky that way.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Okay, so we've explored your pedagogy, we've explored what's inspired your pedagogy. So the point of these podcasts is to be able to kind of spark conversation and reflection in practitioners across the education system, from early years right through to further education. So what is the one key message that you would give to other people to inform their pedagogical practices?
Mm-hmm. It's really difficult. I read this question. I thought, I'm going to see where this conversation goes and try to put it together on the night. And I'm like, trust in the kids. I went to, I was very lucky to hear Sir John Jones speak. And he said he went for a head teacher role and he didn't get it. And one of the questions he got was, describe teaching in 3 words. And he said something, I can't remember exactly, but something like, love, challenge, and something else. And he didn't get it, but his friend got the job instead. And he asked him and he said, see that question that, describe education in 3 words, what did you say? And he said, oh, that was easy. I just said, children, children, children. And I thought, that's kind of, yeah, I got that talk in my probation year, and that stuck with me as well. Mm-hmm. It's about them. And I feel, again, in Scotland, we're so lucky that it's so child-centric. The child is at the centre. And I just feel we need to anchor ourselves to that, hold on to that. And that's kind of our guiding principle. Especially when things are going right, come back to the child. When things are going wrong, come back to the child.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's right, isn't it? We can become, there's so many pulls and tensions that we face as educators and as senior leaders in settings where you've got a lot of different kind of accountability issues that face you. But I think you're right, when things get complicated, when things get tricky, back to the children in front of you.
Yeah. Or the chocolate digestives, one of the two.
Yeah, cake's always a good thing. Okay, so what's next then, Blair? What's next for you?
Do you know, I'm at this stage where I really don't know. I can only think short term actually at the moment, which is quite exciting. So yeah, we've got a brand new football pitch at my school. Very, very lucky. So we've got lots and lots of plans. I coach 3 football teams. And we want to set up a parents kind of parent family community type thing as well. So that's big at the moment. In primary 7 we're going on camp, and I've got their school show to do, which we always write together as a class, and we do a musical. So this will be the third time doing it. The last one with my P7 was quite upsetting because that was when COVID hit. So we had it all planned, we had it written, and we just started rehearsing, and then COVID hit, and we never got to do it. So, yeah. But the kids have got a great idea. Honestly, 30 seconds, I'll pitch it to you, Dragon's Den style. Cool. So they came up with it. They wanted to do something a bit like Inside Out, but it's outside in, which is quite good. So there's a pupil, girl or boy, who is going to transition to high school. And on their first day, they're so worried that they kind of, I guess they squeeze, and all their emotions pop out and run around the school, kind of running riot. It's so genius. Great. Yeah. So and then they had so many great ideas, but I love the one that's really stuck out to me, that was like, we can have shy and confident, and they can be twins, and they can like have run into the canteen. And I was like, oh, I can see where this is going. This is amazing. So yeah, so I can't wait to put it all together with them.
Please, can I have an invite? This sounds amazing.
Of course. Why not?
Yeah, super.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are accompanying these series of podcasts with a playlist of inspirational songs, and you have 2 spaces on that playlist. What are you putting on there?
Oh, it's so hard. Shot in the Night by The Killers. I absolutely love that song.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I think the message behind that as well is just one of optimism and yearning for that wonderful glitzy Las Vegas style life. So I absolutely love that. And because it's a bop, and I think you need a bop, Kim Petras' Heart to Break. Again, absolutely love that. But I have lovely memories of that when we were in lockdown. The kids wanted to do a dance. So like I did a video of 16 bars, and they had to learn it and then video it and submit it through Teams. And we did it that way all week. And then I put a kind of dance compilation together to us dancing to that. And it's yeah. I've still got it in the iPad at school, and I still watch it now and again, and it just makes me smile. So
That's fabulous. Brilliant. Oh, Blair, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if anybody's listening still and hearing me waffle away, thank you again. I appreciate it. It's very humbling to be asked on these things. So yeah, thanks, Bex.
No worries, thanks. That conversation with Blair was one of the first that we recorded for the Pedagogy podcast series. And interesting to go back over it now and think about it with the lens of some of the other conversations that we've had, particularly with children and young people around about their experience of their own learning. That key message that Blair is very strong on about trusting the children in front of us and working with them and recognising that that partnership is really powerful and that pedagogy is about those relationships between everybody in the space. So brilliant to hear about how he's using that in the upper primary, and particularly about how he's incorporating the sustainable development goals in there as well. Really heartening to hear. Please do like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, and get in touch if there are conversations that you think would be useful for us to have. Thank you so much for listening. Bye now.